Hey everybody, Dave Rollins here. Today's video is a 2-month review of the Smartflex 4x5 SLR. So I wanted to give my thoughts on the camera after having shot it quite a bit. You know, I've shot a lot of sheets, I've shot a lot of the Instax wide now, and I think I've formulated a few different opinions. I've learned a lot about the camera, and I think the general conclusion is that I still very much like this camera, but I do have some things I'd like to talk about. First off, I want to say though, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm, and if you really want to support what I do, you can go to daverollins.com and buy a print. I've got a limited run of prints up right now, still running in a couple different sizes, as well as an artist proof of an image I did of the aurora when it came to Northern California, shot in point rays. It's a 16x20 print. It's an artist proof, so it's the only one that I've got of that shot. So if you like my videos and you want to support what I do, it helps me immensely when people buy prints. So the first topic I want to dive into here is the Smartflex lens. The lens is a very nice portrait lens. It will serve you well in that purpose, but it has a great deal of field curvature. The field curvature gets much worse when you do distant subjects. So even like a group of people, but up to, you know, when you're doing landscapes, it's almost impossible to hold the corners and the center in focus, because they sit on two different planes. One is in front of the other. So in my findings, the center of the lens is actually focusing a little bit behind where the corners are. There's a degree of field curvature. And for my liking, or for my needs to do skateboarding, BMX, stuff like that, I need a flat field lens. I need a lens that focuses, you know, the center and the corners, everything is flat from corner to corner, everything around the frame. Even if it's a shallow depth of field, it's all focused in one plane. And so for being able to kind of guesstimate when somebody goes way up in the air, I will draw a line mentally upward, and that's how I'll get the proper focus. But with the Smartflex lens, that's just really not going to be able to be a thing. So I did have to buy another lens. I got this one. It's a Steinhale Munchen. Somebody correct me please in the comments. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a 210mm Coleman f4.5 lens, and this is a process lens. It was made for like copy work. So this lens is flat field in focus, and I've been able to get you know, more success using this lens, along with the fact that I'm able to focus Instax at infinity with this lens. So that was one issue that people had with the Smartflex lens, and that, you know, I've noticed with the Smartflex lens is it's really only good for close portrait work. Once you move the focus screen up on the Smartflex, you're stuck at a very small focus distance. I believe it's like 5 or 6 feet or closer, something like that. So it limits you to only being able to do like a 3/4 portrait or even just a headshot. So with this lens, I'm able to shoot a larger variety of subjects, especially being that it's a flat field lens. This is not to say that the Smartflex lens is a bad lens though. The images that I've gotten from it have been exceptional. But I just am not going to take it out if I'm going to do star trails, if I'm going to do any of the action sports stuff that I do. I'm not going to be using that lens. And if I do use the lens, it will have to be stopped down a little bit to mitigate some of that field curvature, but also just kind of knowing with where my subject's going to be and how the framing is, that, you know, the corners and the edges of the frame around where the center is are going to be focused closer than that center. And this issue is not really that big when you're doing close focus. The lens was really designed to do close focus work. If you notice, a lot of the examples that Smartflex has put out, they're close portraits. You know, there's not a whole lot of distant portraits. So if that's something, you know, that's a deal breaker for you, then you may want to look into another lens like this. That said though, also if you're photographing a person in the distance and they're going to be in the center of the frame, well then you'll probably be alright. So it really just depends on the image. Each image is going to be different in the needs of the focus. And I've just found throughout the years of using the Aero Ektar that I like that flat field lens. One tip that can help you to get better focus with the lens is don't center focus and then recompose. Make your final composition and then get focus. If the person's head is at the top of the frame, well, you need to get their eyes in focus up there. You can't center focus and then recompose like you would with some other cameras. Just the nature of doing that has changed the distance of things, and when you're at f2.5 on a 4x5 camera, you're dealing with a very, very shallow depth of field. I mean, it's minuscule. So you have to be exactly precise in terms of your focus. So compose your image, get your final focus while you're in your final composition, and make your image. All right, moving on to the camera body. I really have no complaints about the camera body. It just works. I mean, it's like a Graflex SLR. The Graflex SLRs just kind of worked. So the shutter speeds have been accurate. I've used flash with it, and that has worked really well. All the functions of the camera body have worked exceptionally, so I've had no issues in that regard. Some people have asked me about the depth of field adapter that you put on the top and use your smartphone to take pictures. I'm not going to dive into that. That's just not something I've been interested in. What I like to do is to shoot sheet film. So I haven't used any of the roll film adapters, and I haven't used the depth of field adapter. Though I'm sure, you know, for folks that want to use that, it probably is a pretty cool thing. I'm just not interested in that personally, so I apologize. I don't have any kind of tips or thoughts or anything on that, other than, you know, if you're going to shoot roll film, you're going to be more in the center of the image, so the field curvature of the lens won't be as big of a deal. And you're kind of in that optimal range for most lenses where they perform very well. Another thing I was asked about on the camera is the bellows draw, which appears to be about 48 millimeters. I've had success using my 300mm Fujinon telephoto f8 lens. It's a T lens, so it's a telephoto lens. I've had success also using my 210mm f4.5 lens. And I can't speak to how close the focus was with those, but it wasn't an issue. I was able to take all the images that I needed with those lenses. Of course, as you enter into the 300mm range, or even the 210mm lens, you're going to get less close focus than you will with the 178mm lens, but that's just kind of how it goes. With that said, there was one thing that I did kind of overlook in my user guide, which was being able to switch the back from portrait orientation to landscape orientation. So you'll see here, it's really easy. Just undo those red knobs, lift up on the tabs. You can pull the back out, rotate it, and insert it back in the same way you just kind of removed it, you know. So it's really easy to operate in either landscape or portrait orientation. I do wish that the focus screen had marks, crop marks, to be able to show you where the horizontal and vertical frames are, but I get it. They're trying to optimize it for the depth of field adapter, and so if you've got that on there, well, that's going to be in your shot, so you don't really want that. But for myself, I just took Sharpie and drew lines for the vertical crop. I don't really shoot horizontal images, at least not with the 4x5 camera. I don't that much, so I hadn't drawn them on there yet, and I figure at some point I'll probably need to, but I have yet to do so. I'll probably just put little marks on the corners to kind of show me where my crop is going to be. And honestly, I didn't need to put those lines down the side, but because I work in a vertical composition 99% of the time, I just went ahead and drew lines straight down it. Another tip, when you're shooting the camera, and you've made an exposure and you know you're about to make another exposure in the same lighting, it's best to just put the mirror down and cock the shutter back to the shutter speed you were just at. This will avoid potentially shooting the next shot at the wrong shutter speed. And I learned that the hard way when I was shooting a Graflex SLR, so it's already second nature for myself, but I feel like the best course of action is that you make your photograph, the mirror flaps up, the shutter and everything fires, and you put the mirror back down and you turn to the next shutter speed, and then I'll put my dark slide back in and flip my film holder. Another minor quirk of the camera body is just that the tension release has slipped for myself, and so it'll be and the tension, instead of clicking evenly, will just kind of run from high all the way to low. And so there's a little knob that you'll see here, and I had to tighten that a little bit, but that's not terribly difficult to do. I wouldn't call that really an issue. It hasn't loosened up since, so it's been just fine. I guess my only complaint with the camera body is that the mirror lockup is a little stiff, and so I had to kind of work it with some pliers to get it to loosen up. And since doing so, the mechanism is a little bit looser than I would like it to be, but it still functions just fine, so it's not a big deal. If you feel like you're going to use it in mirror lockup, then you might need to do that because it is a little stiff, but I think they made it stiff so you don't accidentally bump it or something and then fire up only the mirror when you go to take a shot. And I had that happen to me once. It was kind of a bummer. So from then forward, I've just been kind of making sure that the mirror lockup function is in the proper position when I go to shoot. It takes a bit of a bump to get it to move out of the proper position, but it is possible that you could bump it that hard if you've loosened it up like I did. And it is also possible that, in my camera bag sometimes it might get bumped, and then when I went to make that exposure, it was not an actual exposure. It was just the mirror firing up. But the shutter has such a distinct sound that I knew immediately only the mirror had gone up, and so I just put it back down and then went about making my photo by, re-engaging the mirror lockup mechanism. The other thing is using it on a tripod. I actually did have some motion blur in shots that had a pretty fast shutter speed, so there shouldn't have been motion blur. But I think what's going on is that the mirror going up and the shutter firing causes the camera to jolt a little bit, and it's not really noticeable when you're holding the camera against your body because your body dampens all those vibrations. But if you're on a tripod, that's not really happening. So if you're going to use it on a tripod, just be aware, and you may want to access that mirror lockup function. So build quality. I really have no complaints on the build quality. Everything feels pretty solid. I did have an issue with the viewfinder, and it's just that it was a little loose, but they sent me a new one and it got me taken care of. The one thing I'll say is the Smartflex customer service is top notch. They've been great. They've worked with me so well, just talking about the camera and the little things that have gone on with it. And they've helped, make me a lot more comfortable with the camera. It's nice knowing that the company is actually in your corner and they want you to succeed. This project that they put together is a huge thing. So it's not just something that they put out into the world to make a quick buck from you and then disappear. It seems like they really want to work with people and make sure everybody's happy. So I applaud them for that. That's great. In actual use, I've had a lot of success with the camera. All the images that I've taken, I've really enjoyed. It's kind of reinvigorated my photography in some regards because I felt like something was lacking. I can't always bring a tripod. There's instances where maybe I want to take a photograph of a dog and I'm unable to do so because, sit still while I get my tripod all set up. All right, sit still and focus the camera, load my film in. It's just not possible with my speed graphic to take pictures of dogs unless they're the best behaved dog ever, or children, or whatever it might be. Anything that's moving fast, you're really going to need to work fast. So those are instances where an SLR is needed. And so it complements my speed graphic really well. And I think some people have asked, well, what's the purpose of this? A 4x5 camera with no movements? And I think they're kind of missing what this machine is about. This camera is all about taking really nice portraits of people with that creamy out of focus background and just a level of detail and feel that isn't really replicated in a lot of other types of cameras. You could argue maybe some medium format cameras can kind of touch on that, But certainly the 35mm, if you're shooting like a 50mm 1.2, it still doesn't really come close to what this camera does. And the experience of shooting it is something else too. So in the end, I think that this camera really shines when it comes to making portraits. That's, of all the images I've made, the sports images have been really cool and they've got a vibe that I just cannot achieve with my other cameras. But the portraits have been really where it's at for this camera. And I think it comes down to this when I give my final thoughts on the camera here. It's a great camera, but there is no perfect camera. There's no such thing. Go try to find a perfect camera. Like when we speak of digital cameras, it's like this camera has great images, but the menu sucks. Or this camera, you know, the button layout is really weird, but the menus are okay. And the image quality is good once I post-process the images. There's always something about, you know, I don't like the range of lenses, but I love the camera body. Every camera has its own thing. And they're all just tools. It's something to help you get the image. But not every tool is going to be right for the job. If you're trying to hammer a screw into the wall, it's not really going to be the same as hammering a nail. If you're trying to use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail, again, wrong tool for the job. You can make things work, but it's all about having these different tools that help you to achieve that final vision. So I'm happy to be an owner of the Smartflex 4x5 SLR. It's just another tool in my bag of tools that I can make photographs with. And at this point, I really have very few. I like my Canon EOS cameras, the 35mm and the digital, honestly. And I love my speed graphic, and this is just another addition. So I highly recommend the camera. After 2 months with it, I'm still as in love with it as day one. It's really a great camera. So check out the Smartflex website. I've got a link in the bio below. Check out my website. You can purchase a print if you like my videos, you like what I do. It really helps support my continued use of 4x5 film in general and making these videos. Like when I make a video, I'll often go out and shoot, but if I'm running low on film, it can be kind of hard to do. So, you know, it helps me immensely. If you go through my Instagram, @Cinedar, I've got a number of images on there. If you find one you really like and you want to buy a print, you can direct message me on Instagram and we could work something out. But yeah, at this point, I feel like I'm rambling. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.